Nobody sees an issue there, do they? We put those tires on yesterday. I still had the jack underneath the pumpkin. And as some of you might recall, we ended up shoving this thing off to the side. And we ended up moving the back end over, and it just slid on the front blocks. I mean, it's not like it can go anywhere. Well, I brought it back over to give me a couple more inches to get through there when we were done. And putting this tire on, I had the blocks underneath the bar to lift it up and wiggle it around, and they weren't under the tire. They are now. I didn't even notice that yesterday. Noticed it this morning though. And I can't do like I wanted. I was going to take some flat bar and literally wedge it between the bolts and the axle and weld it to the mounting plate. Yeah, that ain't going to happen because things aren't even enough to do that. So I'm going to go in between the bolts underneath the bottom of that mounting plate. I just got done cutting a couple pieces here. Well, 4 pieces. Once again, using what I got. It's 1 3/4 material that's cut. Yeah, probably ended up 1 5/8 by 2 inch. Or close to 2 inch, that was the plan. I know I can get into the back to weld it. Not so sure how the front side's going to work out. It's getting between the S-cam housing and all those bolts. It may not get anything to the front. I don't know. But at least if there's something to the back, if I hit the brakes, and I'm not going to go nowhere. The other way, yeah, hopefully I'm not pushing that front tire that hard. So that's what I got for now. Well, I cleaned that thing up so I could actually see through it better, because welding where I'm welding. See if I can get a hold of the camera right. If I can show this. When you're laying down here looking up, those lights are an issue. There's that one. I got the one started on the front side here, but my head with a helmet on it doesn't fit between the S-cam and the frame and the pumpkin very well. So it's hoodie time. I went a lot of years without one of these. Before we got the new Massey small baler, we had a basket case, same frickin' baler, but it was a 4655, I think, Heston. And we had a bunch of work to do inside it, where you really can't move with one of those. This was about the least expensive, and by the looks of it, best quality hood I could find at the time. And I cheated. Yes, you see it. That is an automatic lens. Helmet did not come with it. That was separate. But I can still flip it up so I can see clearly without the tint from the lens to begin with. And it works great. So that's what I'm going to put on here in a minute. And crawl back under. At least hopefully get both of the front ones done with that on, and then go back to a helmet. These things are great this time of year, better than summer. When I used it before, a lot of that was in the summer inside a baler. 90 degrees out and you got a leather hood on. Yes, it's got these cute little vents. They work. It's bad enough with them there, though. So anyway, that's how we're doing. Checking everything over, seeing what we need to do to the frame before we paint it. We're really, really close to the paint part, I think. And but I want to see little things like, is our radiator going to sit right back where it was, which is what those tabs were for. I gotta go do some measuring and see if there's room for an engine, a transmission, and a transfer case. I mean, we don't have to have much drive line because the only thing wiggling is the engine. The rear end and the frame don't wiggle from each other. So it's just a matter of a real short drive line. Has to be a slip line, but be able to slide. Otherwise you tear something out, but it ain't gonna take much there. And, you know, like I say, while I'm looking at what we gotta do, let's see if we're able to use that cross member again or not. I'm hoping so. We had to cut that out to get everything apart before, and it was, the center section was mostly gone. It just kind of, well, it was still there, but you know, that was kind of in the way of the gear shift or something. I don't remember what now. But going from a straight 6 to a V8, you're not any longer. If anything, it should be a little shorter. And if we can use that with the automatic in it, it'll all be underneath that, or it should be. But little things like, hey, look, that was some noise from my phone. Usually just vibrates. Right there it rubs. It's just that section. You can kind of see the 2 black lines I got. There, it's just that section. When they cut that, they didn't cut it even. So my thought was, I just take the little grinder with the cutoff wheel on it, sneak in there. Yeah, I can't get in close enough with it. So it's the big grinder with a cutoff wheel on it. That's not the same wheel, but that's the same grinder that I just about lost my arm for. The gates on the front of the feed barn, when we replaced those years ago, we bought them. And of course, you know, nothing fits, so they all got cut down. And they're a 1-piece upright and top bar. And then all the crossbars welded in on those gates. And I thought about it when I started to cut it. I thought, I better not cut all the way through, because there's going to be a lot of tension on it. There was. I'll show you the pieces that we cut off. Those galvanized pieces of tubing right there. Lots of them been used for things. I mean, there's different lengths because we had different size holes to put the gates in. But I made my first cut, and I had that thought in the back of my mind, don't go all the way through, so I didn't. I had that pulled halfway out, and it took a perfect half circle out of the cutoff. And that sucker climbed right up my arm. The trigger lock on this, we never used it. In fact, it should have been disabled. I don't know. I don't like using those on these things because it's too dangerous. They shouldn't have them. I had a long sleeve hickory shirt and a sweatshirt on. It came right up into my armpit almost. Cut into my wrist good. Give me 2 slices on the forearm. Till it finally wrapped my shirts up enough into it that it stopped the motor. And of course it's humming and buzzing and sparking, and I couldn't get it to shut off. I finally was able to reach back and grab the cord where it was plugged in over here on the bench. Got a plug strip on there. And that's how I got it to shut off. I got that pulled and literally reached over about shoulder blade height is where both shirts were, and I just peeled them off with it and laid them all on the ground. Took a look at my arm and called Dad, and I said, get in the pickup, you're taking me to town. So I went to town and got stitched up. Still pay for that, you know, just one more of those things. Cut halfway through a tendon in my wrist, that kind of stuff. Once in a while my wrist will lock up, hurt like hell. All part of life. But anyway, so I'm going to take that bugger. And I'm going to hopefully get it laid in here just as flat as I can and not dig into the support piece here. And just do a little clearance work there. That's my plan. If you get to see this video, you'll know my plan worked. Well, maybe. At least you know I didn't kill myself doing it. If you don't get to see this video, well, it was nice knowing you. Well, I survived. I didn't quite get in where I wanted to. There's a little bit back there that may or may not touch. I kind of dug into that piece of plate a little right back there where there's a shiny spot. But it doesn't drag now. It may over there somewhere. It's really close. But before I put it right there, it stayed there. Now if I let go, oh sure, now it sticks. I'm not touching it. I'm standing back. It's free. So that doesn't mean that's not going to change. God only knows what it's going to do, bounce around the field. But, you know, it did that for probably 30 years. I'm just guessing because, you know, guessing on when it was probably built. I know early 60s there was a lot of rigs like this built. The newer ones nowadays, they don't do the drop frame. They're usually taking a truck frame or a school bus frame and putting it on an angle and putting wedge blocks in so your rear end sits right and the engine sits clear underneath, suspended. They got away from doing the neck on them like this. But there were a lot of these built, say, in the early 60s. Our other buggy was, from what we've been able to find out, was built in about 62. And I'm going to guess this one's, you know, maybe a little newer, but not much. I know they built them like this into the early 70s. Neighbor that farms across the road here, he's got I think it's an old Dijon buggy. Dijon was making them years ago too. They figured using 3 wheels, especially down in the valley where it's softer, you know, a lot of flat ground and doesn't necessarily drain that well, and you go out there on 4 wheels, you'll break the crust with the front, you'll get stuck with the back. And old man Dijon, he always says, if you don't break it in front of it, you'll keep moving. And they do, as long as you can keep the weight appropriate. I don't know how much we're going to have on the front, but I know the cab's not light, whichever cab we do use. Engine isn't too heavy considering. This one will probably be a little heavier on the front than the other buggy is. Part of it because it's got more frame right there. But we'll see what happens. Everything's a learning curve, you know. Our old buggy, when we built it, it had racing slicks on the front, racing slicks on the back, and we had duals on the back. And if I could walk out and tip my toe up and put all my weight on one heel, if I'd sink in to where the heel and the sole meet, odds are I could cross it. If I sunk in any farther than that, I didn't even try. And sometimes I was mistaken. That's not a good thing. That old buggy's been buried up to beyond the frame. I actually climbed out the back window and skeened across the tank and walked out the booms before I found a spot I could walk. And once I got there and I jumped off, I sunk in halfway up to my knees. 200 feet of cable later, the tractor only sunk in 1.5 feet, but it pulled it out. I don't like having to do that with a buggy, especially a 3-wheel buggy. So hopefully we don't do that. We'll find out when the time comes, though. If it comes. I hope that doesn't come. Seriously. I don't like having to get stuff stuck.